You're listening to We Deepen Media.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to another episode of Deepen with Christina. I'm your host, Christina Weber, founder of We Deepen, Feminine Weapon, and also a certified professional love coach. For anybody who wants to add a little skip enjoyment into the dating journey, or to deepen a connection with a significant other, or maybe just to find your tribe and be in community. We Deepen has recently expanded to include a private matchmaking division, which is so much fun. We are getting to cast a net, and it's interesting when I say a net, over the human connection field. I was recently in a meeting with Dave Asprey the other day, and I shared with him about We Deepen. And, you know, this podcast follows my entrepreneur journey. So you're in as I've been sharing through this podcast. I want to shine light on the human connection industry. And he looked at me and he's like, industry, it's like a field. And I love feeling into the field and the landscape, because there is so much being offered right now and so much coming to the surface, because more and more people are seeing how healthy, meaningful, loving relationships are what is going to transcend, up-level, bring us into a higher state of being and consciousness with one another, create more love in the world. And the private matchmaking, it's so interesting to play in that field, because I get to look around all of these social and transformational experiences and follow who's going in and out of relationships. And me and my team, who I like to call midwives, or like the midwives of connection, get to support those relationships and also identify the people out there who are doing the work with us, because it's a field. And today I'm in Austin, Texas, and I went to this event last night. It was the Soul Salon. There was Charles Eisenstein, Just Magic, Deepak Future. It was at Kuya, which is a wellness venue here in Austin, Texas. And I ran into two friends from Los Angeles who happened to be in Austin, Texas, Emilio and Rachele, and they are the relationship renegades. I have been in admiration of the two of them as they came into connection years ago. They've recently gotten married, and they are leading a movement of being, when we first started talking years ago, I was saying, I'm like looking at of who are our relationship role models? Where do people go to see loved lived? And that's when we start this conversation, because I identified the two of you as being relationship role models, even though you were so new in your relationship at the time. And it's beautiful to see that you've grown into a more deeper, solid example of what is possible, and fun and play and joy. So I'm so grateful that I ran into you last night, and you are here in Austin, Texas, and you said yes to me showing up just 24 hours later to record this podcast and fitting in. It's so good to be here with you today. Welcome to Deepen with Christina.
Oh, thank you so much. Happy to be here. Thank you for having us.
Yes, thank you so much. So honored to be here, and just love you so much and everything you're doing. So happy part of it.
One thing before we jump into this interesting conversation, if you do enjoy this podcast, please like, subscribe, follow, share it with friends, specifically around the topic of relationships, because let's bring more people into the field. Come into the field with us, because while you're hearing us talk, what we are most interested is being with you in person, in real life. And you're going to hear about Emilio and Rachel's work together. And they host retreats, and they are going to have invitations for you to come be together in person as well. So I'd love to start this conversation with your origin story. I've heard it, and it's so, I hear the waves and the beach and the sand and the late nights. Who tells the story?
Oh, man.
We kind of go back and forth.
It's a little song and dance.
It's a little song and dance. So
Yeah.
I think we'll do a song and dance.
Yeah.
I will say a fun fact before we even get into the origin story is that we actually... Well, first and foremost, for most of my life, I always felt like there was this essence of a man that I was supposed to meet. And even though I had fallen in love with other men and had really, several really long-term, deep relationships, I always felt this calling, like this voice in my head that says, like, this relationship is good, but you're supposed to be with someone else. And it kind of, what I think happens in a lot of relationships, it made me be in this space of kind of always half in and half out. And that was one of the many reasons why a lot of those relationships got really unhealthy and very toxic. Because anytime you're half in and half out of anything, you're asking for it. And so just knowing that for basically ever since I was a kid, I felt the essence of him. And as soon as I met him, it was as if I was like, yep, that's the guy. And we were both at the Bulletproof Biohacking Conference a year before we actually met in person. We took a picture at the same booth with the same people, and we didn't meet because we weren't ready for each other yet. And that year prior to us meeting was crucial. We both went through very significant experiences that we had needed to go through to learn and grow and heal and be ready for each other. So anybody listening right now, if you're like, why haven't I met my person yet? There's probably a big reason why. And they might be at same events as you, but you guys just aren't ready for each other yet. And that's why I think one of our main messages is it's all about healing yourself first and learning and growing and being the kind of person that you want to be with, because you attract at the level that you're being. And so, just wanted to share that before we even got into it.
Yeah. Well, speaking of the level of being, to follow that up. So before I met Rachel, I had been on a self-development journey for a long time. I mean, my story that we won't share at this moment, but became a self-development junkie since I was sixth grade. Early on, because I didn't want to become my father at the time, because I grew up in a domestic violence type household. And, and that's such a long story, but luckily there was a Barnes and Nobles next to my grandmother's place. And so while riding my bike, I somehow found that and found myself in the self-help section and continued the journey. And so fast forwarding to, let's say a year before I met Rachel, I feel like I've, learned a lot and have, become the man that I wanted to be. However, I kept getting into toxic and more toxic relationships. And I'm like, what is going on? Apparently I still need to heal because, we're big believers of your external reality is the reflection of your internal reality. So I'm like, well, what hasn't been healed yet within me that I need to look at? And so, of course, more toxic relationships after the next. And there was one that really blew things off. That was during the time that I was with Rachel. I'm sorry, that we were at the conference and that we didn't meet. But I think I wanted to share that's important, that even though you maybe have been doing self-development work for a long time and you may have not found the love and lifestyle that you've always wanted, that, there's still some things to heal. There's still some things to look at. And I think we're students for life. We're going to continue to do so. And so when I met Rachel, and the way that we met was, at first it was online, and it was a mutual friend of ours had tagged us in a breakdancing K-kick online, because that lady was like, you two are the only ones that do this kick, and for those reasons and more, you guys need to meet, right? Just tagged us, and we were like, okay. So we started talking, we followed each other just like you do any day. You just follow each other. And then that was that, every once in a while I would see her, through posts and reels and whatnot, and vice versa. Probably I saw her more than she saw me, because, she's this macro influencer TV star. And later on we found out that I had so many Instagram messages, and she would just heart message back to me. And I'm like, oh, that was it. Okay. But anyway, so like a year after following her, I had an opportunity. I was in Austin, Texas at the time. I had an opportunity to go to LA for the first time, actually, to do a demo for this wellness technology device that I do. It's Pulse PMF. And anyway, before I met, I reached out to Rachel and said, hey, you're the CEO of this disruptive movement, which was the company you had at the time. And we have a very disruptive technology in the wellness field. Maybe that we have some synergy. Would you like to get a cup of coffee? And she was like, sure, gave me her number and all this kind of stuff. I was like, oh, wow. Okay, that was easy. And then, but it was, yeah, exactly. So, and I often do that just to kind of like get outside my comfort zone, meet new people and what have you. This was a business dinner, however, of course. She was a very attractive woman. I definitely wanted to get to know her. So maybe there was like 50-50. But for sure, she fit the model and mold for the brand ambassador we needed. And when I showed up, we were meeting at this little salad place called Sweet Greens. And I was there on my phone inside. She had just parked. And I remember pretending to be on my phone, I see her I can hear her open the door behind me, and I'm like freaking out. And normally I don't get that nervous, but I'm like kind of getting really nervous. And she just pops into my life. She like pops right in front of me, peace sign, and is like, hey. And I remember to this day, like, it was such a shock because like I was like, I know you like very deeply, not just because of what I've seen online, but it was like in person, the energy, the resonance was like so strong. It was like, and I found you, and I hid that for maybe an hour. But anyway, I'll kind of let you maybe take over, babe. But like, it was very powerful, right? When we saw each other, and basically 1 hour of business turned into, 8 hours of deep conversation where we really started to get to know each other very deeply.
Yeah. And kind of from my side of things, when we say that we had connected online, it wasn't like we were talking. It wasn't like we had any sort of online relationship. It literally was like, I would do stories and he would leave me these heartfelt messages and then I would heart them. And then it was like almost a year long of that. Cause he really didn't post that much online. And I was actually in a relationship at the time. So I wasn't like during that year, it was prior that I had gone through this breakup. So anyways, when he messaged me, it was at this time when actually I was praying for abundance. So when he messaged me about a business opportunity, I was like, yes, thank you, God. I was like not in a space where I was even like, cause I had gone through this breakup and I was like, I just want to work on me. I'm done with guys. I finally did the brave thing and like ended a relationship, which was always my pattern, is that I never ended things. And that felt like a lightning bolt of, I really feel like God or the universe is really seeking to know if we actually have learned our lessons or not. Like, did you actually learn the lesson, or are you keep repeating old patterns? And so anyways, that was a huge thing for me. And then he had that message in my DMs and I was like, yes. And I literally was like, this is business. I'm so excited about this business opportunity. I remember driving there, and as soon as I parked, it was as if my soul knew something was about to happen, because all of a sudden I got these butterflies and I was like, what is happening? This is a business meeting. Like, I really didn't even know that much of what he looked like, because he never really posted online it was just always about the technology. But as soon as I was there, it was just butterflies. And then as soon as, like I said, I popped around the corner to him, I was just like this instant soul connection. And I was like, and the minute we just hugged hello, I was like, oh my gosh, this is the man of my dreams. Like, it was so powerful. And everyone had always said, when you know. And I really always thought that was bullshit. Like, I was like, no, like, how is that even possible? Because I've been with so many different guys in relationships that were great guys. And I always felt so unsure. And so, it was just this instant knowing. And then it kept getting deeper and deeper and deeper. And also that both of our walls were just down. Like, we were both so fully ourselves. There was no... Finally. Yeah. Most of the time in my past, it was like I was trying to be this person that I thought they wanted me to be. And I was really in this space of, I'm literally just so done with that. And I just want to be fully me. And I was seeing him be fully him and being fully honest with me about things that I was so surprised that he was being fully honest about. But instead of being triggered by some of those things, I loved it. I was like, man, this man is being so honest and raw and real and fun and playful. And that was everything I wanted. And so you know, especially on the dating journey, I think if you're really looking for your partner, it's so important to be able to fully show up as you. And if you end up playing those games of trying to be someone you think they want you to be, it will only end up worse in the long run.
Yeah. And I'd love to just add on to that too, because it took me a long time to be comfortable in my skin and, you know, to be confident, not with the masks I used to wear, like in corporate America, oil and gas, finance, accounting, which is where I feel like my past life, but that was, you know, what I used to do early on. And you know, I had all these walls and characters and masks I used to wear, and I was comfortable with those because I used to wear them for so long. And during that unbecoming self-development process, I really had to get comfortable with like this nothingness, which was the everythingness and just me. And going through that, I think it was so great that what you said, because I was finally in a place just to like be ridiculously me, because I could be so ridiculous. And, you know, there's a quote that maybe sums up what you were saying. What I'm trying to say is, you know, you can't say the wrong thing to the right person. And so it was just like, it doesn't matter what I say. It's just like the right, whether it's your partner or the tribe that you're trying to attract and build and co-create or what have you. It's just like, we love it when everybody just is raw and real themselves, because that's what the light is, and that's what's going to light more light and really light people up. And so, yes. So to continue with that and kind of maybe bring some closure, because I'm sure there's a lot of questions, is we did that dance for, 8 hours or so. It was past midnight. I had to go. I had a big 7 a.m. meeting, and then said goodbye. Drove 15 minutes back to my Airbnb. I was going to crash because I was so exhausted. She calls me. And I'm like, should I play hard to get? Should I what should I do? And I'm like, she's calling me right now? What? No, I was like, I answered. She says, hey, can you come back? And No,
I was just so excited and I couldn't go to sleep because I was like, I just met the man of my dreams. And I was like, I'm just so lit up right now. And I'm going to go over to the cliffs looking over the beach in Santa Monica. And I was like, do you want to come back and join me and just keep talking? And I wasn't in for it wasn't about sex. It wasn't about hooking up or anything. It was just I couldn't not be around him, if that makes sense.
Yeah, no, beautifully said. And so I honestly knew, and it was another kind of soul, feeling of when she said that, I knew that my yes or no would change the trajectory of my life. And I was seriously exhausted, 2 days of not sleeping, traveling for business, et cetera. And I was just like, yes. And I got in my car, drove 15 more minutes back to that place. And of course, at this point, I'm like, okay, we came strictly for business. It's not business anymore. Or maybe it is, but there's obviously a deeper connection here. And so we talked for about an hour, snuggled up, on the cliff, looking over the water. And then I walked her home because I really did need to go back for a big meeting. And, I walked her back and said goodbye. Of course, I asked her if I can kiss her, and she said, told me about the recent breakup and that she just wanted to respect that time. And of course, that made me fall in love even more with her, because for me at least, in my story, I just respect that and love that. That she was open and honest and transparent and just said what she felt. And so I gave her a big hug. And to close it out, I just honest, it might sound cheesy, but it's so true. I could not let go of Rachel. We kind of hugged and swayed and danced on the street at 3 a.m. and people were cleaning the streets, and there was a person singing in the corner, and we were just we're being serenaded. And so no lie, so that hug lasted 45 minutes. We could not let go. We both looked at the stars and were like, what is happening right now? And so I did my business day the next day. I had to leave right away, but I canceled it and extended it for a week and literally spent every single day with her for that week. And then we went back and proceeded the long distance for 10 months before I decided to move to LA and continue the journey.
Wow, that's such a good story. It's worth the entire length of it. It's interesting that you say of that in that moment when you asked if you could kiss her and she said no. I'm healing from this breakup. You had this beautiful embracing moment for 45 minutes. It makes me think though, because in that you said that you trusted her and her even more. that it made you more attracted to her. And Dr. Sarah Nazaratum, who is a mentor of mine, I remember her telling me years ago around boundaries. And oftentimes there's this dance with the boundaries. Oh, I like boundaries. Oh, I don't like boundaries. Oh, I want to be free. Oh, and it's almost in that she's teaching you about herself. And it was a little bit of boundaries, but when people tell you those things, it helps you to better get to know her. And that's where I hear of you saying the trust is being built in that moment. Yeah. So, okay, it's a question for you. So I am a few years older than the two of you, and I'm currently single. And I've done a ton of self-work. And so I have a hard time when it's just left to this idea of, oh, the more healing that you do and the more growth that you do, that's when you'll find him. Because a little bit of me is like, fuck that. I'm like, I've done a lot of things. That's not it. So what do you like? This is a little bit more of a philosophical question, but as you're, role modeling and mentoring people out there in the world, it's, they could get a little frustrated of like, Rachel, Emilio, I've done it all. Like, I don't feel broken. I don't. And you're like, no, there's something still inside of you that you gotta work through. What do you say to that?
Yeah, I have a few things.
Man, that's such a great question. I'm so happy you asked it, because I do think this is something everyone needs to hear. And I think also in saying that, whenever you answer certain questions, it's always usually like a part of a way bigger complex topic. And I think it's really important to know that everybody's journey is so different. And I think we all come to this earth. I mean, I think it really depends on what you believe about who you are, what you are, why you're here. Those really deep, powerful questions. But I think our soul, we're so much more than a physical body. Like, this body is just this meat suit. And I think our soul's journey here, everybody's is so different and it's so unique. And I don't think that it's only about this, oh, you just need to heal. First and foremost, I don't think anybody is broken. I think that we're all beautiful and awesome. But this healing work that we're talking about is more so that anything that isn't healed within you usually you will be triggered by what other people do in certain ways because of this law of resonance. And so it's more to the standpoint of, because of all the healing work that you've done and the different maybe relationships you get in, things that people do will either bother you or not bother you, dependent upon if you've healed certain triggers or resonance that you might have. But at the same time, like, your dream partner that you've probably been dreaming up your whole life, I really believe is out there. And I really believe that they're working just as hard as you are to find you. And I really believe that time, I always say, like, the wait and the work is so worth it. And also that, again, I just can't stress enough, everybody's journey is so different and no one is better than the other. They're just all unique. We've talked to people that have found the love of their life at 70. And I'm not saying that like people need to wait and be like, oh, I have to wait till I'm 70. Like, that's a bunch of bullshit. But, I think it's never losing hope that it's possible to find that love and to never settle. I think that's really important, because I think in life, one of the things that people settle with the most is relationships. And because they lose hope, because it is very challenging to keep believing regardless of the circumstances that you go through, and maybe relationship or dating after dating and not finding that person. So I think just in life in general, that skill set, that muscle, in order to build it, like even as an actress, this muscle of being able to continue to audition for roles, regardless of how many times I get rejected, with the same amount of optimism and hope and possibility and enthusiasm, even after I've gotten rejected 100 times. That it's still going to happen. And those are the people that then win Academy Awards. I feel like those are the people that then so deeply appreciate this relationship because they've had to wait and work so hard for it. That kind of love is like transcendent of other kinds of relationships, maybe. I don't know. I just think everybody's journey is so different. People meet their person at 20, people meet their person at 70. Like, and time is also kind of like it's made up, so yeah, it's really complex. I'm so happy you asked it.
And I think, and some people, that might not be their destiny this lifetime. I do feel that there's this part now for me. I've also, there's a thing inside me that wants to wipe it from my consciousness that sometimes, but I've had this envision of like, I would be in a hospice bed and there I'd turn over and I'd be like, it's you. And then we meet and we hold hands and we die together. And it doesn't also have to be that way. But it's this deep mission that I'm feeling. And it's like, as you're speaking to, it's, some people in their lifetime, they feel a deep calling to monogamy. Some feel a deep calling to polyamory. Some don't feel sexually activated. And some date the opposite gender, some date the same gender. It's all, a choose your own adventure and really strip back and continue to discover more and more and more deeply about yourself. It's like, I think maybe even like the reframe of the self-work is more of like the self-discovery journey of who you are.
Can I say something just with what you just said about like the wiping the consciousness? Sometimes you were like, sometimes I just want to wipe that away. Or what came up for me when you said that was, I kind of did that. Right before I met Rachel, there was a moment 2 years prior to meeting Rachel where I had just got out of like rock bottom for a couple years. And, there was this long process I don't need to share now because it's a super long story. I mean, we can, down the line if need be. But when I got out of that, there was this moment of like, okay, because I feel like in self-development, there's a lot of doing. I'm going to go to this conference. I'm going to go reflect. I'm going to go do this. I'm going to go do that. I'm going to do that and blah, blah, blah. And it's all great. But then there gets to a point of like, how am I being? What am I embodying? Am I embodying all of that? Right. And then also, am I allowing for everything to happen? And so I feel like when we talk to a lot of people, they're doing like incredible work of just doing. Some of them then switch to maybe having more balance with the being. But then a lot of people just don't let go, wipe everything clean, and just be like, whatever happens, happens. I'm no longer trying to, like I'm looking at a chair right now, right? Like Yoda would say, you can't try to pick that up. You either pick it up or you don't. And there's not this like trying. And so I feel like this allowing is such a big thing right now because I think there's people that are trying so much. Whereas the moment when you just kind of like say, I'm just going to let it all go, like in every sense of that word, where, I'm now looking at a plant, right? Like you can only water that plant and putting in sun and trim it and do all that kind of stuff. You got to like allow that plant to grow and just like let go and walk around, let it grow, let it do its thing. And there's a beautiful analogy with like bamboo, for instance, right? Where you plant bamboo and you can do everything perfect for bamboo, but nothing happens for 5 years. And then it sprouts after 5 years. And then it shoots and becomes exponential. And so I just feel like everyone listening, making sure that we have that balance. And even if we have all that balance, but I think there's something so key about surrender, because when I did surrender, and when we talk to a lot of people who have surrendered completely, that there's a lot of connection, human connection that happens, whether it's your partner or tribe or anything else.
Thank you for that. Yeah, bringing in the state of surrender, and it also is like I hear you saying like I let go. They tell people who are single, once you stop searching, you'll find him. Like let go of that, and it's like this, Yes.
I got told a bunch of times, but I think it's this.
That happened for me at least. I can only speak for myself.
Interesting thing. I mean, I love the quote that's like, there will never be another you ever with that. And like the entire universe, space and time, it's like we're all these like snowflakes that are all just so uniquely put together. And I think what I'm so excited about is for society and people, we are so wired to want everybody to believe the same as us, think the same as us, be the same as us. It is like deeply wired within us from an evolutionary standpoint where we lived in these tribes. And if you didn't believe the same or live the same, you got cast out. And if you got cast out, it meant you died because you couldn't survive without the community. And so I think like on a deep genetic level, we're wired for this deep connection and also for this like life to be the same as others. However, we're so uniquely different. like in nutrition and like what we need to eat, how we need to sleep, how we need to live, how we need to think, how we are with our partners and what love is like and what sex is like every aspect of life is so unique to each person. And I think when we really let go of this concept of like, I should be this way, or it should be this way. And we just really surrender to like, okay, what is my life's journey? What is my soul's journey? Like, why am I here? And like continue to ask for guidance in how to live the fullest expression of what is uniquely you and your unique journey. I think that's when all of life and the world would get a lot more joyful.
I love that you bring up of the individuality and the uniqueness, and your own, thoughts are different than other people's thoughts. And it's interesting because the two of you, it's really obvious from the outside looking in of like, these two people are meant to be together. There's like a deep oneness within as looking out. Now, within that though, that experience of feeling like this is my partner and that you guys felt each other so deeply, also you're two different souls. And how do you then, like as Esther Perel's work talks about how when a couple comes together, everything's up for negotiation. So I imagine there's some part of you and there's soul recognition of an assumption that we're thinking the same way and being the same when we want the same things. However, the conversations need to be had to really make sure that you're on the page. So how do you two dance within that? And how did you negotiate your relationship? And I'd even love to even starting with the topic of monogamy, because I assume looking outside that these two people are monogamous. How did you two know that if that's true, that is right for you and that was right for the other person?
Yeah. I mean, I love this question. And I mean, first and foremost, the answer is yes. Like we had both, that was like, I think that's an important question to ask like day one, like what, and we dropped into a very deep spiritual conversation, like pretty much right off the bat. And one of my mentors, his name is Daniel Schmattenberger. I think one of the most incredible people ever. He had taught me actually during the breakup prior to Emilio, because I was just so frustrated. And I felt like, right before I met him and while I was going through this breakup before him, my own mom, bless her heart, she's amazing, but she just was trying to she's just worried about her daughter. She was like, maybe you're being too picky. Maybe you're being too picky, Rach. And it was like a knife in my stomach. Like, it was just like when you're so feeling so much hurt and sorrow and like frustration, to hear that from your own mom is so difficult. And I remember just like calling him or like voxering him, like crying and being like, why do I keep ending up in these situations? And he was like, well, because you need to learn how to ask more powerful questions at the beginning. I think a lot of people are very scared to ask powerful questions at the beginning because they don't want the other person to think like, to have all the, we create all these stories about what's going to happen. But I think it's just like, if you're on the journey, it really depends. Like, are you just trying to date to have fun? Or are you really trying to find your person? And if you are really trying to find your person, to really understand what your values are and to make sure that you're finding a partner that has similar values. Because if you don't, then there's going to be a ton of conflict you're going to have to move through. And yes, on the outside, we look like very similar, but we also are completely different beings. And we've had so many deep conversations about our differences and respecting our differences. And in every relationship whatsoever, I think that's what makes it beautiful. Like, it's supposed to be this partnership is your unique superpowers matched with my unique superpowers makes this beautiful thing. But I also think in order to find those things, like we've had to go through, I think anytime we get triggered, we think of triggers. It's like our belief system that triggers are gifts, that they're beautiful gifts wrapped in ugly wrapping paper. And when you're feeling all those emotions that feel like when you get triggered, what I used to do in previous relationships was I would like get scared of those feelings and I would suppress them, deny them, run away from them. And it wasn't until I really learned how to be like, oh, like there's a gift under here. Like, what is the gift? What is the lesson I'm supposed to learn here? Because if I lean into this, I'll be able to more deeply understand the other person and be able to have a deeper level of love and connection to them than I've ever experienced before. And so through our differences and through getting triggered or triggering each other, whatever you want to call that, because of those times that felt so uncomfortable and us having to have really difficult conversations, we were able to find those beautiful gifts and be able to connect on a deeper level. And I think, one of the biggest things is that happens, people view a relationship that looks like, we do have a very beautiful, playful, joyful relationship, and we work hard to create that. But that comes from the ability to have really challenging, very difficult conversations and stay in this place of love and choose love over fear, even when it's very challenging.
I'm going to add just right there is perfect, because I think the way that we were able to have deep, hard, powerful conversations from the beginning, I think, and we didn't label it back then. It's a label now that we always talk about at Relationship Renegades, which is always creating a space where we both feel safe, seen, heard, and loved. And, I had learned that on my journey just with a lot of men's work and shadow work and different intensives I've gone to. And of course, Rachel had learned that through other means. But, we were doing it then, we labeled it now. But I think anytime that we needed to have a deep conversation, Rachel and myself, it's always those four things. Am I listening truly? Am I, is there tension in the air? Is there something, does she really feel loved? Does she really feel safe right now? Because if she doesn't, then she's not going to share everything she wants to share, or it's going to be challenging, or she may suppress it. So I think that's really key. And I think another reason why we were able to, we have two souls, we may be different, instead of assuming, and we feel like we had that one mind, because we do feel like, there's maybe some soulmate situation there. But regardless of the case, in addition to being safe, seen, heard, and loved, we also incorporate what's called realities and actualities when we talk about. So I know that, the number one human impediment is that we constantly live in our heads, right? With this ego-centered, maybe I'm not good enough, I don't have enough, or maybe I'm better than mentalities. And a lot of people, especially now, are stuck in the past because the stories are running them, or they're in the future, hoping, wishing, praying, maybe even afraid of what may come next. But, as we all know in this self-development work, all we have is this present moment. And so anytime on our journeys, in the ups and downs, we are always asking ourselves, along with the triggers, is this a reality that I'm creating? Is this a story I'm creating in my head? Or is this actuality? And the only real way to get through that is through conversation. By saying like, hey babe, I'm feeling, just like really scared right now, and a little frustrated, a little angry. And I'm creating this story that you are thinking this way, or that you're doing this way. And we both kind of take it out of ourselves. So we both know that we have a true self, higher self, and we both believe that we also have a false kind of ego self. And so we both will take it out of our heads, like literally act it out and say, hey, look, babe, outside of my body is this false ego self that is creating this story right now. And that is not me, my higher true self, but it's thinking and feeling this and this and this and that. And we'll like kind of mold it out in front of us. Like, oh, it's interesting. We're sort of like, we're talking it out. We're all both learning and growing from this experience, because we know it's only going to lead to a deeper connection, because everything is either going to lead to a deeper connection or a big blowout. It's just up to you. We have that choice. And so I'll leave it there. I just wanted to add the realities and actualities and the space.
Can you share with me a specific disagreement or difference that you two had that you have to work through?
Oh my gosh, there's so many. Not so many, but like a good amount. Is there one that you want to share, or I have maybe some that are coming up?
I mean, first and foremost, when you're in a relationship with a female and male, it's first and foremost understanding. I think one of the most important things for both men and women to do is to just understand the basic differences of the way that women are wired and the way that men are wired. Like, if you don't have that fundamental understanding, like, it's going to be really rough. And I feel like that deep understanding and us continually reminding each other of, hey, remember, I'm wired different than you. My brain works different than you. And not trying to change each other or like put each other down for our differences, but more like, hey, that's your superpower and this is mine. And how do we optimize and set up our life for success. And also we're really big on, people talk about like morning routines. We're also really big on like, what's our love routines every day? Like, what are we proactively doing every day to nurture this relationship so that when we do have challenges that come up, those muscles are so strong. Those, connection muscles. I'm such a physical person and I grew up an athlete. And so relating everything to like the same way you look at, like, I have to go to the gym and lift weights or do something physical to build physical muscles. I have to do something on a daily basis to build my mental, emotional, spiritual connection muscles. And if I don't, I'm asking for it. Like, I'm not going to be prepared when the time comes. And so, there's
so many differences.
Yeah, so many differences. I think one of the biggest differences that's been a huge thing in our relationship is I am very free flowing, like very spontaneous, very, unstructured. And he is much more of the like planner, even though he doesn't always want to be, like
or I don't always admit it.
And so us really understanding about each other, like, there was some really big conflicts, especially like, say, when he was moving to LA, or like when we're trying to plan trips, or like, we're trying to plan events. Like, I am so like, oh, we'll just trust that everything's going to work out and it's going to be great. And I'll just show up and just speak from the heart and, like, trust divine guidance and be good. And he's like, we need to plan. We need to have rehearsals. We need to like set the schedule. We need to, be organized. And that was so challenging to really decipher through. But at the same time, when you really look at that, that is the most beautiful partnership ever, because how would we ever get anything done if we didn't, And so I think being able to pull the lens back, but I think the biggest thing with,
well, just real quick, just while you're saying that, I think it's such a great question. And I love that we're talking about this because, one of our main themes, we have, some of like our sweatshirts that we have is seek to understand is like one of the biggest themes of our relationship or of our company. And not only seeking to understand that you have a female brain and I have a male brain and that there are differences, but yes, that's a big one in our relationship, but I feel like even, there's a lot of people like, they have a list, right? We always talk about making a list of what you want in that partner and then, holding yourself accountable to being that list. And then next thing you know, things happen. But sometimes there's like rule breakers, if you will, like on those lists, like, this one's a rule breaker. I think some people have their rule breakers, but a rule breaker in mine for the longest time, and this was a big difference. I don't remember this one. This is, so I have Catholic roots, like Catholic Christian roots. And, not only for my mom or my dad, but even for myself, like subconsciously, I'm like, I hope I find like a Catholic, beautiful woman that like is on my journey, and because religion or spirituality was such a big thing. And spirituality is a big thing for me, but it was kind of like still mixed with religion and all this stuff back then. And, Rachel's roots are Mormon. Mm-hmm. And so when we found that out and like where she stood, where she was at and where she was branching off of and like where I was at, different roots, different structure, different, all this kind of stuff. It was almost like my false ego self wanted to just like, can't, done, because I already had a rule breaker. I'm done. And, it's not like, even though we did so much work, I was aware that my ego self wants to come up fast and strong in whatever conversation could be different for others. And on that one, I was like,
That was terrifying.
Yeah. And so that one had more work to be done to create space to make sure that we created that safe space where we felt safe, seen, heard, and loved. We talked about, hey, this is a reality I'm creating. It may not be actuality, but let's talk about it because I care and I want to get to know you better. And I think that's important because a lot of people sometimes will have that and immediately run. Because there's a thing of like, yes, like I used to have so many red flags and it would take me like 3 months of seeing it, but then not do anything until 3 years later. So there's that extreme. And then there's the extreme on the other side where people see a red flag and they're like, I'm out, I'm done. And I'm like, whoa. I feel like there needs to be a little bit more conversation. And this is just my opinion, where it's like, I don't know if it's in the middle, but there's two sides of that coin. And I think it's important to like, I could have completely just said red flag, I'm done in a lot of that conversation. But I was like, I'm getting so triggered right now. There's maybe something else within, and let's just keep chatting to see what happens. And I just thought that was important.
I think that's really powerful because I do think, in most relationships, there's some sort of, not all, but there's a lot of people either grow up in different religions or different cultures. And, really just making sure that both parties.
1 second, love.
We are still recording. It seems like we're stopped recording for a second. We're back on track.
So just making sure that, especially with, if you grew up in different religions, there's a lot of people that have, what I found was that I had religious trauma, and I had all these stories about what was or what is, and really having to work through what were those stories and what hadn't been healed within me on that level, that I was projecting onto him in our relationship, and how you can be in a relationship, even if you have different, like my parents are, I grew up Mormon. My parents are, how do I say it? Have different beliefs. And that happened after 30 years of being married. My dad did a 180 and completely left the religion that their whole marriage was based on. And they still, even though I completely thought they were going to get divorced, they still were able to stay together and have been together, for, gosh, I don't even know how many years now, 40 years of being married, but and it actually made them grow closer. So I think that's so much of what we're trying to do with Relationship Renegades, is to help set new possibilities and standards for what's possible in relationships. That there's all these labels of the old ball and chain, or the nagging wife, or the lazy husband, or just these stereotypes that gets put out in media so much, that we've been so programmed to think that it has to be that way. And that's not true at all. These are just stories that have gotten told, and they just keep getting told, but somebody has to do something about it to start changing it. And so, it's a very complex, we could talk the whole time about that, but just,
which is the renegade portion.
Yeah, which is the renegade portion. But especially if you have different cultures or upbringings or religions, to really be able to, decide, if conflict comes up, if you're feeling all those triggers, there's been so many times, I think one of the biggest muscles or skill sets is to be able to breathe through when you're feeling so hurt or so frustrated or so angry or so scared, instead of to realize the choices that you have, and also to know the consequences of those choices. Because I think so many times we are in this reactionary mode where we just feel scared or hurt or angry, and we do these things or say these things in that moment. And I think that's what the proactive work really helps with. It's building those muscles so that you don't just drop the weights on your foot and break your foot, or, you don't drop the ball in your relationship and end the relationship when you could have been able to breathe through it, release some energy, go hit a bag, go outside and scream, do whatever you have to do, and then come back and be able to have a conversation from a loving, authentic, open space, from this higher place that, Einstein's quote of, you can't solve a problem in the same frequency it was created in. And so you have to do something to shift that energy. You have to, that's why we're both so passionate about being able to allow each other to have the room to be able to do what we need to do to shift our energy, because everything we are doing and being is coming from that energetic state. So even before this interview, I had some really things, just we had a crazy day. And right before, I was just feeling all this stuff. And so I had 5 minutes. So I walked outside and I got in sunshine. I put music in, and I was just jumping up and down and dancing and trying to just do whatever I could to shift my state. Because I know that everything comes from the energy in which I'm in. And being able to communicate that with him, so he doesn't think I'm just running out the door and leaving him to do this interview by himself, being able to say, hey, I really need to take some space right now. So there's so many different things, but I hope that answered the question.
Thank you. Yes, a lot of information inside of there, and it's all so good. It's almost, you two essentially are working through and sharing relationship hacks. I see a little of Brené Brown. The story that I'm making up is as the head is going into all these places and then being bold enough to share those stories and ask questions. And it's interesting of, values, to bring her up again. Dr. Sarah Nazaratum has created the emergent love model. And she, oftentimes we think that, love is the foundation of the relationship that is built on. And when you have love as the peak, it's like the foundation, it's built on love. And then, and then we have sex and then we get married and then it's happily ever after. And then it all comes crashing down. But what I hear that in these challenging conversations, that the foundation, that the love was always there from the beginning, because there's you two are both love beings. So the love is actually easy to be there. And the foundation of it's like, well, there's an attraction with each other. And now we're assessing, we're compatible. There's a shared vision, and then we respect each other. And then love is this icing on the cake that wraps it all around. And it's actually interesting as values, because you could look at religion as a value. It can be a shared vision as well, but if it could be a value. And they've done some studies and said that actually values is not the thing that keeps couples together. It's more of the shared vision. And so having those conversations to align and continue to be like, are we in an alignment in the vision that we see in the direction that we're going? So to hear you, when you talk about your parents ending their relationship, or not ending their relationship. You're disaffiliating from a religion and staying together and being strong. It's because that shared vision is still alive and there. I also really love how you two bring up genders, and this is where maybe to end this conversation, because I know we're close to our end time, is how you talk about the difference of the male brain and the female brain. And so often, this is not a topic that's taught in school. I've sought out, Dr. John Gray, Men Are From Mars, Women Are From Venus, and Alison Armstrong's work. How do you two, especially in a time where there is a little bit of let's not pay attention to gender differences. How do you bring that into relationship? How do you understand it also in the polarities conversation of the man is to lead and, the money aspect? How does gender play into your relationship?
So I love that you're bringing this up. And actually, I recently just saw, I don't know if you're familiar with Teal Swan. I recently just saw a video of hers, and I loved how she put this of like, we, as much as the world is trying to, and even she said like the feminine movement of trying to be like, hey, we can do anything that men can do. She's like, we can't. We're different beings. We're physically not as strong. Like there are certain things that men can do that women can't. There's certain things that women do that men can't. And rather than trying, just like I said before, the world was everyone is so wanting everyone to be like them and to be the same and to think the same and do the same. If we do that, we're missing the whole point of being able to celebrate our differences and work together as true partnerships. Like I'm so grateful to be able to have this understanding of, I'm not trying to make him like me, and he's not trying to make me like him. I'm trying to understand our differences and then celebrate those differences and optimize for those differences, and to help both sexes understand that if we try to make each other the same, we're going to miss out. Like, I just think we're going to miss out on something beautiful of being able to celebrate our uniqueness. And it's more so understanding like, hey, what makes you great? Like what makes a male being great, and what are the strengths that they can play to, and how can they optimize for that? What makes the female, being, what are their strengths, and how can we optimize for that? And how can we work together to celebrate each other as still as this. One is not better or worse. One is not more needed or less needed. It's like they're both essential, and they're both incredible, and they're both needed. And so I don't know. I feel like the more that we can just honor and love and respect each other as divine, limitless, powerful beings, this concept of respect, I think, is just like respect and also trust, right? Kind of plays into this as well. This trust is so deep. I think a lot of times too, when we're talking about love, we're actually talking about, can I trust you? And there's something I definitely want to talk about, and I'll get back to it later on trust, that I'd love to bring up later. But before I get there, I definitely want to hear your thoughts, babe.
And Emilio, I want to hear your complete thoughts, but I also want to prompt it with this question. What does being the man in this relationship mean to you?
All right, double whammy here. So I'll just kind of be in the moment, see what comes up, whether it's with that one or the first question or both. Well, the first one's still kind of within me, so then I'll kind of go there and blend the second question. So this is a very complex and controversial and like juicy kind of topic, right? Which I love because yes, both feminine and masculine qualities exist between me as well as Rachel. And, I just think about it as a magnet. There needs to be a negative and a positive, right? So it's like that in nature. And when I think of nature, I think about we both individually and collectively in our partnership live like nature. What do I mean by that? Well, one of the great books that I love that changed my life during a rock bottom period of mine was Wayne Dyer's translation of the Tao Te Ching by Lao Tzu. And it was called Change Your Thoughts, Change Your Life. And the Tao, God, source, universe, nature, really, the way that this book embodied this was, I can bring about a quote that maybe sums it up a little bit. Like, there's a lot of stuff going on in your life. Don't fight the river, be the river, right? A lot of people want to, go upstream when life is telling them go downstream. They're trying to go forward, but the river's going right, and they're still trying to break through the rocks. And it's like, why don't you just like lay back again, surrender and let it take you to the right. And then maybe it'll go to the left and maybe it doesn't. And like, I think that's the way that we live our lives. And the reason why I'm bringing that up is that, yes, nature has those masculine and feminine qualities, and we're all of that. But we're big about not labeling things a lot. Yes, we understand that like our hardware may be wired differently, and so we respect that because we are physical beings, but we're also spiritual beings. And in that spiritual beingness, there's just nothing and everything, and it just is. And so what I'm about to say is not like a right or wrong, and whatever people believe out there right now is not right or wrong either. It's just thinking makes it so. And so I think we always challenge each other that like, I'm always challenging myself, and Rachel's always challenging herself. We're always challenging each other and what we think, and that may evolve. And what a collective consciousness, what we think right now may change a decade from now because of what's happening in the world. Who knows? And I guess I'll just say we choose to not label a lot of things in our relationship to where we just feel like we're earthlings on planet Earth. And we all have bones and blood and feelings and thoughts and emotions. And regardless of sex or gender or anything, that like a human is a human. And I want to make sure that that human feels safe, seen, heard, and loved. And I want to make sure that that human understands that I may be creating a story or not creating a story. And if I get triggered by this human, that I have some work to do. And that's it, right? I think people, and it's totally fine. I think some people really, I don't know what the word is. I'll just say love or appreciate or decide to talk about labels. And again, not right or wrong, totally cool. It's just everyone says things differently, has their own energetic blueprint. For us, we choose to not label so much. We will respect the hardware that we have and how that's different. And let's talk through that and see how we can communicate that way. But I think, and correct me if I'm wrong, love, like we just kind of live like nature, and we just are like, whether it's us or a stranger or a friend or a client, it's like we've got a human in front of us that wants to feel loved. How can we love them? And as a man, to answer the second question, how I show up in this relationship, I want to show up. It's kind of like what I said in our vows a few months ago, and reiterating everything. As a man, I want to always create a space where you feel safe, seen, heard, and loved, my love. And I want to be responsible for my own realities when I get triggered. And I want to make sure that I'm constantly looking the man in the mirror, always, and that I'm never settling, that I'm always dating you. I want to show up as a man because I grew up in a domestic violence household, and where my mom didn't have a voice, where my mom, was scared to speak up, and my mom, in my opinion, didn't live a full life. And same with my dad. I mean, it's all product of their own environment, but like, we get to choose. As a man, I want to choose and lead, and Rachel leads too, but like as a man, I just want to create a safe space. In our shared vision, like we were talking about, I want to make sure that we communicate that, and that I can direct us when need be, whether it's physically, mentally, emotionally, spiritually, financially. But yet again, because both of us have negative and positive qualities, the polarity, there are times when Rachel leads. And there's times when I lead. And again, I think it's just beautiful when we can communicate like, babe, I'm going through a lot right now. Like I didn't sleep. I got a lot of work. I'm super stressed. And like my ego false self is like prime time right now. I need you to step up a little bit. And it may, the wording may be different, but it's just, we communicate that. And Rachel's like, I got this and I got it this time. And so I think it's a man, it's like making sure I can be vulnerable enough to communicate that I can share my feelings, that I can communicate bravely. And just making sure, because Rachel really loves this, and I guess I can conclude it here, no matter what, I think as a man, sometimes we get tied up in like, and this is traditionally speaking, like I need to work really hard, get all the money, put the meat on the table, if you will, and I can get trapped in that just because it's at my core. Like I had to do that for my family early on because of the environment we lived in. So it's just at my core. But Rachel, all she wants is for me to like love, play, sing, and dance with her. And when I do that, as you guys have seen probably on Instagram, then that's when she feels at her fullest. And that's when she feels like everything is right in the world. And so like, in a way that leans a lot more, because at the end of the day, we can die tomorrow. And we didn't play, we didn't laugh, we didn't share stories. Like we didn't like do this. And so I always try as a man to keep that as a priority, rather than just work. So I think it's important to always remind myself of that.
Oh, thank you. Thank you. So good. I love bringing it into it because there is the, who was it? Jessica Insel Coleman of Magic Human Connection. I had her on the podcast and she talked about, a couple to elevate their relationship. You can work through conflict and go to a therapist, and you can bring more joy. And so it's like that dance of like bringing more joy into the connection. And that's essentially, I imagine what you're seeing is like, she's really happy. She's really happy when I play with her. And like, if I buy her a watch, I don't know, she's like, great, thanks. Let's go play. Yes. Yeah. Relationship Renegades. What is it? Like, if you were to describe it and share, what is Relationship Renegades?
Yeah, I mean, it's a movement for sure. Like I said, I think, I definitely want to share something that I always think about is when we first started dating, Emilio was like, there was a fear that came up and he's like, you're an actress. And most Hollywood relationships, they always fail or they're really toxic and they end up on tabloids. And I was like, yes, that's what you see in media. But as an actual actress in the industry, all I was actually surrounded by were these beautiful, like power couples that were doing so much good in the world, but you never heard about it. And so I was like, when we were birthing Relationship Renegades, and it's continually evolving, but I think one of the main missions was to really bridge, to do all that we can with our gifts, talents, and strength as actors and performers and creatives to really question and also do all that we can to create new programming and to highlight and to celebrate and to feature these beautiful, powerful, incredible relationships and how they're doing it, because they are out there. They're just not celebrated and they're not focused on, and whatever you focus on expands. And so what you're seeing in media, this toxic, unhealthy, failed relationships, I really believe that so much of why we have so many problems in relationships is because of that, is because it's what people are seeing. And so they think that's what's kind of celebrated. And so the more that, our big vision is to really bridge the gap between the personal development industry and the entertainment industry and the personal development industry. So big vision, working on a lot of really big, small and big edutainment pieces that then teach these powerful lessons in a very entertaining way, and also celebrate all these beautiful relationships that are doing it so that people can see more of it. And then after this, kind of edutainment piece, be able to have a support community where people can go to then dive deeper and learn more and be a part of this community and a part of this collective of how they can learn how to have, to learn relationship hacks, how they can learn how to, and also to find other people that are like-minded. And so there's a lot to it, and we are working on like big vision things. But I'll just say, in the future, definitely having our own films and TV shows that teach these really powerful lessons of what you called relationship hacks, basically, that then at the end of those, then have a call to action to like, hey, if you want to come join us and learn more about these lessons that you saw on this TV show or this movie, then come join the Relationship Renegades community, where we have a team of experts and neuroscientists and gurus and everything like that, and help for people so they actually have a place to go. So that's kind of big vision. That's where we're going. But in the meantime, we have lots of other things too. Like we have an upcoming retreat that we're doing. We're and group coaching and all this different kinds of stuff. So yeah,
the renegade portion. Well, so when you say like, what is Relationship Renegades? The reason why it's Renegades is because there's a current story right now of what relationships are and how they are and what marriage is and what marriage with kids looks like. Like, we're digital nomads right now for a year and a half, right? And people are like, oh, you better do you have kids? No. Oh yeah. Well, you can't do that when you got kids, you got to make sure you do all of that so then you can settle down and get some kids. And it's like, well, that's an interesting story you have, right? Because like, yeah, it may be more challenging, sure. But like on our travels, we met a ton of families with their 6-month-old and their 2-year-old and 5 kids doing the exact same thing we were doing and world schooling and loving it and having all these adventures and so, if you think you can't do that, then you can't. And if you think you can, you can. And so, it's everything, right? So I think there's moments where in every industry, right? At one point you thought, oh, we're going to fly one of these days. You're like, what? That's impossible until it's possible. And we were like, oh, we're going to have this phone that we're talking on right now. And you can do business all over the world. It's impossible. What do you mean? It's going to fit in your pocket? What are you talking about? It's impossible until it's possible. So the renegade portion is like, what's impossible right now in relationships? And how can we make that possible? How can we go against the grain and rebel and renegade? Like, how can we rebel against everything that has ever been said about marriage and kids and relationships to self, others, world around us? And how can we completely rebel against that and create a new way of living, a new earth, a new consciousness of how relationships should be? And maybe should is wrong, could be. And so it's all about setting new baselines on what's possible in life, love, and relationships. And so that's a little bit more about the movement.
Amazing. One last question. Who are 3 couples from your vantage point that you look to? Because you said from behind the scenes as an actress, I get to see all these power couples that the media isn't showing you. Yeah. Who are these power couples?
Man, there's so many. I mean, off the top of my head, I definitely feel like I mentioned before, my own parents are honestly like huge relationship renegades for me. And even though they don't have a perfect relationship, I think that's the other thing we're trying to say. This doesn't mean there's not conflict. It's just like how you work through that conflict and how you go through things. And you're able to work together and continue to choose to learn and grow together. So that's first and foremost. Another one, I'll definitely shout out one of our really good friends, Scott Donald and his wife, Amy, are literally like just some of the most incredible, like powerful, like up to the biggest things in the world with 3 kids and a new one on the way. And just with so much on their plate, with literally like his goal is to make $1 billion and to give away $1 billion, and watching them and how they work through things. And like, it's incredible. And then, you know, like, even though I don't personally know them, Ryan Reynolds and Blake Lively, to me, like just and I realize that, you know, again, don't really know what their actual relationship is like, but what they put out and what they stand for and how they show up in their relationship in the media, to me is really inspiring. And I can name probably so many more, but you know, there's also people like this beautiful female producer who I really respect. Her name is Autumn. She also is this amazing woman in film and TV, produces films all the time. She's a huge advocate for children, like protecting children worldwide, making movies that are really trying to change things when it comes to helping. It's just very philanthropic, has kids herself while she's also doing this, a beautiful relationship with her husband. And I mean, just so many more. Just, you would not know these people though. Like
Ryan and Blake and Dak Shepard and
yes.
his wife.
Yeah, those are more people that you would know that we don't know personally. I'm just, there's different situations where I think there's a lot more really beautiful couples in the media that are showing up in a powerful way. But there's also a ton of people behind the scenes that you would never know about, that are working. We'll talk about like power couples in the entertainment and or like entrepreneur industry in a big, big, big way, who are extremely successful, very financially, you know, free, so generous, are working on multiple projects, but their biggest thing that they talk about is their family comes first and their relationship comes first, and like play and joy and choosing that over money, choosing that over work. Even when it's really hard, I think it's just like those kind of people that we're really excited to continue to share and to celebrate.
Thank you both for sharing your genius and for doing the work that you're doing in the world. And you can always count on We Deepen to support anything that Relationship Renegades is doing. I also think it would be really fun, you know, when we ran into each other last time at the biohacking conference, which you talked about in the beginning of, you guys had that moment where you were both there, took a picture at the same booth, but didn't meet each other. And we ran into each other there last time on the weekend that I got to facilitate the dating dojo at the Biohacker Conference, which to me felt revolutionary for, an interest-based conference to request a quote unquote singles event for their participants to meet and interact. And now the dating dojo, our vision for that is we're planning to facilitate the dating dojo in other big conferences and festivals. How fun would it be to do it at Comic-Con, and at Kuya last night where we were. And I see that a collaboration can be that the artistry that you bring into the entertainment that you bring into it, and the skit that I got to see that you,
Oh, did you see that?
yes, and to see bringing that skit in with the dating dojo would be perfect. Specifically, I can see people within, because a lot of We Deepen of our primary demographic is like that 30 to 50. We see that 30 to 50s is generally the age range when people are like, something's not working in these relationships. But now getting to the younger generation, which I see you can speak really well to them, and inviting them into these spaces where they don't have to learn how to date and interact for the very first time on Tinder. Yeah. So that would be really fun. I'm planting that seed right now.
We'll water that seed.
Yeah. Perfect. Thank you both. And we'll link in the show description where to find Rachel and Emilio and Relationship Renegades. And thank you all for tuning in to another episode of Deepen with Christina. Again, if you did enjoy this podcast, please do like, subscribe, follow, share it with a friend, bring them into the field with us, and come play with us in person, because that's even more fun. We all have these activities in live, and we can share with you online and on Instagram, but like in real life, that's where we want to be. Okay, bye for now.